instance, the majority of Democrats weren't here in terms of thinking that this president should be impeached. And then you have the Ukraine incident, obviously, and these vulnerable Democrats essentially get together and say, this was rose to the level of an impeachment inquiry, and we saw over these last many weeks people who were in this president's administration, people he appointed, come forward and say that his actions were inappropriate, and legal scholars come forward and say this rose to the level of impeachment. And this, in fact, was what the Constitution had in mind when they outlined high crimes and misdemeanors in the Constitution. Every single Democrat on those said essentially no president is above the law. You saw Valdemi's with that sign there, and that'll be, I think, a theme that'll continue with the Democrats as they try to gain re-election in 2020.
Dana Bash is over in Statuary Hall up on Capitol Hill. You can see the numbers coming in down 163 right now in favor, 108 opposed to this first article of impeachment, abuse of power.
Yeah, and as this is happening, early this morning when we were talking, I told you that there was a palpable sense that things felt different here. Now, as this vote is happening, I'm just maybe 10, 15 feet from the House floor. The air is heavy. It just feels different. The moment is sort of taken over, despite the fact that everybody saw this coming for several weeks, despite the fact that the arguments we heard throughout the day, the debate on the floor, were very, very familiar. Now is the moment. We're watching it happen. We're watching history unfold. And you feel that not just as us,
and she literally made them from
of that
scratch.
history,
So everything you
people
see is
who
like
are
her
casting
whole
these votes
creation.
know that
Just
this is going to be not just Donald Trump's legacy, but also part of their legislative legacy. As elected
pretty,
officials.
Dana, after this first vote, there was a second vote on the second article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress.
That's right, and we expect it to happen rather quickly. All of the debate happened before the vote started, because you see there are a lot of people on the House floor. As you mentioned, Wolf, the vote is happening rather quickly. Once this first article of use of power is done, then obstruction of Congress will begin, and again, that will probably happen rather quickly because they're all in there understanding how critical it is. It is interesting that you're seeing them mill around. There have been times where in big important votes, people sit in seats. That's not happening right now, but you can bet that throughout the day I was in the chamber, there were people, members, not all members were there all day, but there was a good number of members sitting and listening. And you know who was there most of the day sitting on the floor? House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in various seats, moving around, talking to members, listening to the speeches, talking to staff.
And with now 182 yay votes in favor of this first article, there's 125 nay votes. Jake, should move pretty quickly from now.
One of the things that strikes me as I look at the board there with 183 yay votes is one of the yays, the independent, is Justin Amash. He's a congressman. He was a Republican until several months ago. Essentially, because of Donald Trump as president, Justin Amash felt like he no longer had a home in the Republican Party. President Trump is right now in Kellogg Center in the Kellogg Center in Battle Creek, Michigan, having a rally. And that is Justin Amash's congressional district. I look at that, and I look at the two Democrats who voted nay, breaking from their party. One of them, Congressman Van Drew of New Jersey, is likely about to change parties and become a Republican. And this just reminds me that the effect of President Trump on the Republican Party has been very, very strong, both in terms of how much the Republican Party has become the Trump Party, and also how people like Justin Amash have been chased down. Impeachment politics are impossible to predict. You have Congressman Van Drew from New Jersey about to become a Republican. You have Justin Amash, not because of impeachment, but because of Donald Trump becoming an independent. We have no idea what's going to happen next year, an idea of what this vote is going to be. Right now it's 191 yays, so we're not quite there yet. But we have no idea what is going to happen. Last time there was an impeachment 21 years ago tomorrow. It ended up that the House Speaker, John made this point earlier, the House Speaker, Newt Gingrich, ended up resigning because he was under fire. He was having an extramarital relationship at the same time he was leading impeachment against the president for lying about the same thing. Then the next speaker resigned. Then Dennis Hastert became speaker. Who knows what's going to happen?
And John, let's just take a look right now. 196 in favor, 135 opposed, 216 needed to impeach. So they're only about 20 votes away right now. But what's impressive for the Democrats is even those Democrats in Trump districts, they're going along as history unfolds.
Well, we are seeing, Jake makes it for, we're going to see 2 Democrats vote no. That's not a surprise because they've said so from the very beginning, and they voted against the impeachment inquiry. Justin Amash, who the Democrats will point to, as Steny Hoyer pointed to, the one member of the House who has no allegiance to either party is joining the Democrats to impeach. What you are seeing otherwise,
Democrats at 199,
Republicans
Republicans at 139 to the vote.
The Republicans are sticking with their president, even though many of them privately, in private conversations with these Republicans, even some of the Republicans you saw on the floor today saying what they were saying, but even more so in the Senate, Republicans who privately mutter about this president.
What up, bro? You already know what it's the world famous DJ Swamp is on today's Wednesday. You know what I'm doing. Shit, the whole city, the whole planet, not at the #1 party.
We don't know what's going to happen in this election. But to your point about the Trump effect of the Republican Party, we don't know how this is going to play in 2020. Will the president be reelected? What will happen to either these vulnerable Democrats or some of these Republicans? Not many of their districts, but some of them are within play in a presidential year. But we do know this. In 2018, the Republican Party lost the House majority. Before that loss, a great number of House Republicans retired. A number of more than 20 plus now, we're at 20 and counting, are retiring again, heading into the next election cycle. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party who may vote with the president, but they're leaving. They're done.
They're only 7 votes away right now from 2016, where they needed to impeach the president.
Yeah, well, I think looking at this, we can say that this is the moment when it became very clear that the House Republicans are the party of Trump, period. In the debate we saw all day, they said they gave him a free pass. There was nothing wrong with what he did. Everything the Democrats did was because it was political and they paid the president. They will be unanimous here. And that is exactly what Donald Trump is going to talk about, his united Republican Party. And they are now his party.
You know, Nia, 209
consequences. We've seen people in and around his orbit face consequences. He has been Teflon Don. That ends today with this impeachment, with this staying out his legacy. Someone described it as a tin can that's going to be tied around his leg for the rest of his life and just trail him. And that's certainly what's going to happen. He is in Michigan tonight trying to rally his supporters, apparently telling his supporters that it doesn't really feel like he is being impeached. He is going to be impeached. And I think the question going forward is where do the majority of Americans say somebody who is victim of a partisan process, or do they see him as somebody who's finally going to form actual movement These Republicans have not made themselves and their political
One of the things that shows going to happen now is we talked about how President Trump's own health, in a way, has been consequence-free throughout his life, throughout his business, and also only 2 votes away. And one of the things that has gone on in his White House recently is that people who were the ones who could tell him no have basically been exiled, whether it is former Chief of Staff John Kelly, former Defense Secretary Mattis, et cetera. The guardrails, the so-called guardrails, have gone. This is something of a guardrail. Congress saying no. And even though President Trump right now in front of basking in the adulation of a crowd in Battle Creek, Michigan, one thing that is very clear, and that's probably wise, by the way, because he can't be fuming on Twitter if he's feeling all the love from his many supporters in Michigan. But one of the things that I'm worried about and concerned about what's going to happen now is what's the effect on this going to be on President Trump when he realizes when this starts to soak in. One vote away.
215 right now. They need 216. They can still, while the clock is still moving, the people can still change their votes. That's almost certainly not going to happen. Once it hits 216, that is the number needed to impeach a president of the United States. So we're waiting to see when that number pops up on the screen. It should be popping up very, very soon. You can see only 30 seconds or so remaining, although they always give members some extra time to go ahead and vote.
Time can stop on the floor of the House.
Yeah, this is history is unfolding as we speak right now. The 400. Here we go. 216 for only the third time in American history we have seen the president of the United States impeached. It means President Donald J. Trump is now impeached once again by the U.S. House of Representatives, the 45th president of the United States, as we say, becoming only the third leader.
My pops just came to pass. I told you was gonna get impeached, bro. Did I tell you you were gonna get impeached? See Donald Trump, my prophecy just came to pass. You should watch my prophecy come to pass, bro. I'm a prophet. That shows I'm a prophet, bro. I told you you were gonna get impeached before you even got in office.
Has just formally said, and they're up to 221 votes now, and they only
told you that before you even got
has just formally said President Trump should be removed from office. It's an extraordinary rebuke. Think about how much Democrats hated George W. Bush. Think about how much Republicans hated Barack Obama. It didn't happen for either one of those. It's only happened 3 times. There have been 45 presidencies. It's a shockingly stark reminder of how divisive President Trump is and how polarized our times.
Dana, for all practical purposes, the president of the United States has now been indicted by the House of Representatives, setting the stage for a full trial in the U.S. Senate.
That's right. One count to keep your metaphor going. And
now it's going to go to the next prophecy.
And,
setting the stage for the next prophecy.
Is, as we speak,
he is not getting out of office. The
this,
Republicans are not. Because the Democrats outnumber the people.
Beneficial to
but the Republicans
in the upcoming
outnumber
election.
the Democrats
the reality
in the
is
Senate.
that this is
and
a
the Republicans
who
are going to
no
get their
president
way.
wants to have this as their legacy, especially somebody like Donald J. Trump, who spent his entire business career understanding and caring so much about his legacy that his name was emblazoned on every building that he could put it on. That is the person we're talking about, who now has gone into the history books for something that is as negative as it gets when it comes to the kind of stain that could be on a president's record. Yes, he is going to say, he already is saying, that it is just political, and that might be the case, but when our children and their children, they read about this in the history books, they're not going to hear the toing and froing. They're going to know that Donald J. Trump was just the third president in American history to be impeached by the House.
Yeah, John King, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, is now in the seat there in the chair. She will make the announcement momentarily.
Right, and as we talked about, Gloria made the point, this is proof, boldface, all caps, exclamation point, the Republican Party is loyal to Donald Trump. This is also a moment of personal accomplishment. She says it's a sad day and a sober day, but this has been a hard one for Speaker Pelosi. She was initially against this, and now she has seen her party cast for about 25 or 30 of its members. A pretty tough vote here, but the Democrats sticking together here. She has a big decision to make, and after the second vote, we're going to hear from the Democratic leaders where they're going to talk about this, and presumably she's ready to tell us who the managers will be when we go forward with the Senate trial. So Pelosi will hand this off after the second vote to the Senate, but she has some big decisions to make beforehand about how and who the House Democrats will send over to the next stage of the Senate.
To your point, I mean, there is a lot of political peril in this for those moderate Democrats in those 31 Trump districts, only 2 defections among Democrats. And this is a question of them. Not only could it cost some of them their seats, but it could cost Nancy Pelosi control of the House.
I just want to interrupt for a moment. Take a look at this. There's 1 yay vote among the Republicans. Now, that could be a mistake. Somebody might change their mind, but it's interesting that there is at least right now, 1 Republican who has voted in favor of this first article of impeachment.
Yeah, we don't know.
My guess is that's
probably
a mistake. It'd be a shock if that holds, but it's worthwhile. The only ones that we thought were possibles were Congressman Will Hurd of Texas and Congressman Rooney of Florida, and both of them have come out and said no. I suppose anything's possible. But to pick up on the point you were making, Gloria, about the 31 Democrats who represent districts that President Trump won in 2016, It is remarkable. They had everything thrown at them. They had ads against them. The Trump campaign was sending out individual polling, talking about how much it would hurt them. It is amazing how much they voted with the Democratic caucus, even though their jobs are on the line.
Right, and they know that.
All right, take a look. That Republican yay vote has not gone away. So it was a mistake.
It was a mistake.
That clearly anticipated.
And you had Donald Trump and Republicans courting these folks who were in these districts that they were able to flip. These 30.
Some of them went to the White House Christmas
Some
party.
of them went to the White House Christmas party, but they held with Nancy Pelosi. And I think, again, this is a test. Don't forget.
About $20 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget, they're voting this way, knowing that it's going to the Senate, where the president is likely not to get impeached. So they're voting knowing that they're going over the cliff here.
But they're also voting understanding the politics of our time. There used to be a thing back when Ronald Reagan was president, even to a degree when Bill Clinton was president, where we had a lot of ticket splitting in the country, where people would vote one party for president but vote something else, for Senate or Congress. That's almost non-existent. Susan Collins in Maine is a state that tends to go blue, and she exists. You used to see that. John Chafee in Rhode Island. You had a New England Republican Party or a New York Republican Party, which is almost non-existent now. And so most of these Democrats, they understand, yes, these are very tough votes, but they need their base to win. And so they need their base to win. Can they get independents now? Can they get some Republicans? That's a big old question. Had they voted no, they wouldn't get the Democrats.
Dana's up on the hill. Dana, what's impressive for the Democrats, almost completely agreeing to support this first article of impeachment. What's impressive for the Republicans, complete agreement to oppose this first article of impeachment.
That's right. And I just want to mention that you were mentioning Nancy Pelosi. She is in the chair. And my understanding is that there's one vote, if you look on the screen, voting present, that was Speaker Pelosi. Now, it is actually tradition for speakers. Excuse me, it was Tulsi Gabbard. Thank you for correcting me. It was Tulsi Gabbard. That makes a whole lot more sense. Let me just talk about Tulsi Gabbard for 1 second. We have been waiting to find out what she is going to do. She's been out on the campaign trail making noises at the debate, making noises about how upset she is about the way that this party, the Democratic Party, has been going too far to the left. She's been talking about that time and time again. The fact that she voted present is very telling. Now that we move that aside, because we want to talk about the big picture, I started to mention Nancy Pelosi. One point that I want to make here, because she is in the chair and she does that on big occasions, and it doesn't get much bigger than this, is that every step along the way, she has made decisions. I mean, to the big decisions about moving forward on impeachment, to the smaller decisions about who's on the witness list in these depositions and in these hearings, and which members are going to speak when on the floor here. And she has tried to navigate these very, very difficult impeachment waters, understanding the caucus, especially those moderate Democrats that you all were talking about. We're seeing these votes now. Tomorrow there's going to be a vote on a trade deal so that those moderates can go home, a lot of them in Trump districts where trade is a big deal, to talk about the fact that they gave the president a win, and that is not a dirty thing to say. So we should keep that in mind about how she has played this, especially somebody for whom who the moderates, many of them ran on not voting for her as speaker, and a lot of them are saying, boy, they were wrong about that.
Looks like one Democrat has voted present.
The Hawaii Democrat, who's a Democratic presidential candidate, she decided to vote present.
She had, just a couple of days ago, we talked about how she would like there to be a censure. I'm sure Dan was talking about that too.
Right.
Anderson Cooper's with us as well. Anderson, this is history unfolding.
And we're still waiting, obviously, for this vote to be announced by Speaker Pelosi, the results of this vote to be finally announced as she gavels it in, and then to move to the second article of impeachment. Jeff, 2 minutes, we wait for that historic moment. What are your thoughts?
The President Trump was impeached for one reason, because he deserved it. Because no president has ever done what he did. No president has betrayed his oath the way this president has, by taking taxpayer dollars and using it as a bribe, as an extortion, as a lure to get dirt on his political opponents. And no president has ever issued a complete blanket refusal to talk, to produce any documents or any witnesses to a legitimate congressional investigation. That's why he was impeached.
Tim Natale, you're a historian.
The founders were not sure whether they wanted a strong executive. In fact, George Mason and Benjamin Franklin wanted a collective executive, and James Madison wanted a weak executive. But Alexander Hamilton and others convinced them to have a strong executive. They all knew they wanted George Washington, and they designed the position of President of the United States for one man. They also knew, however, that we're mere mortals, and not everyone will be like Washington. And there might be a time when he would need a
Ratio, the yeas are 230, the nays are 197, present is 1. Article 1 is adopted.
Check me out. Check my Gemini personality.
The question is on adoption of Article 2. The question is on the adoption of Article 2. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman?
Madam Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
ask for a roll call vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will so rise. That will be in order. A sufficient number have arisen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Is a 5-minute vote.
All right, so now they're getting ready to vote on Article 2, the Article 2 obstruction of Congress resolution. This 2 articles of impeachment. The first one, abuse of power. Jake, the President of the United States, has been impeached on that. Now they're voting on obstruction of Congress. I anticipate that there will be a similar vote, although there could be some differences. Some Democrats might vote for Article 1, but not necessarily for Article 2. I suspect all the Republicans will vote.
It will be a very similar vote. We know that a Democratic congressman from Maine who won a Trump district, Congressman Golden, has said he's going to vote against Article 2. This is the one, obstruction of Congress. The idea that the Trump administration, the White House, did not share any documents and also blocked witnesses from testifying before Congress.
All you pastors, I'm
but
telling
the
you,
counter
bro.
argument has been then you're supposed to go to court and have the judicial system figure out the remedy. The Democrats have said that would take too much time and would result in nothing more than what's going on right now. They want to get this done. But we do expect a very, very similar outcome, maybe 1 or 2 votes fewer in favor. But let's just take one moment just to acknowledge the fact that President Trump has now just been formally impeached by the House of Representatives for abuse of Congress. The gavel has come down. When we noted when they reached 216 votes, that they've reached the threshold. But we now have this incredibly grave moment where the House of Representatives is saying to the world, and yes, it was a partisan vote, but guess what? Democrats control the House, and that's how it is. Just like Republicans control the Senate, they're going to get to have their say. And this is a very grave moment where the House of Representatives is saying President Trump needs to be removed from office.
He was impeached for abuse of power, as we just saw. Now they're voting on obstruction of Congress. Anderson, back to you.
And we'll be watching that. It's at 187 right now. 216 is the threshold that the vote needs to get to on the yeas. Tim, I'm going to continue with you in just a second, Jeff, too. But just in terms of the article that they are now voting on, Article 2, obstruction of Congress, you believe that what has taken place is obstruction of Congress, and it's unprecedented.
I do. I mean, every president has had a dispute with Congress over producing some witnesses, over producing some documents, but no president in history has ever said, I will not cooperate at all. That's what this article is about. That's what happened in this impeachment investigation. And this vote is the result.
194 now is the yeas, needing to reach 216. Tim?
The founders were really nervous about putting too much power in the hands of one person. There was no elected commander-in-chief or head of state or head of government in the world in 1787. The United States would produce the first. And so they decided that they would also give Congress power to remove that president, lest or if that president should ever misuse power, commit a crime. And in our history, 44 individuals have been president. We have 45, right? 45th president, but it's 44 because of Grover Cleveland. Only 3 of them, and I'll tell you, they're third, have been impeached. Only 3 out of 44 in 230 years. The founders didn't want us to do it all the time, and let's hope it's not normalized. But the founders did want it to happen when the constitutional order needed to be rebalanced, lest the president misused his power. This has been decided today. It's a very important moment for the country. It's a very solemn moment, but it's a reminder of how our system was supposed to work. You put a lot of power in the hands of one person, there has to be a counterbalancing available if that person misused it. Today, the House said he had misused it.
We're 9 votes away from this Article 2 passing. Charlie, you used to, until recently, be a Republican on the floor in that party. Is that still the party that you belong to?
No, it's hard to at times recognize this Republican Party, which used to be about principles and ideals and values.
Saying some bullshit.
Now it's really about
You know we not gonna play. Oh yeah, we're gonna give it to you the real cold-hearted way.
In recent years. It's amazing how the president has been able to take over the party.
Let me tell you something. West Side General. Let me tell you something. You ain't pulled up to the shit show. Something wrong with you. You hear me? If you think you the shit, I'm gonna pull up to the shit show. You did. And listen, if you saying some bullshit, you know we not gonna play. Oh yeah, we're gonna give it to you the real cold-hearted way.
And because of the president's misconduct and his misuse of his office, that's why we are where we are today.
Lord Coates, it is remarkable to Tony's point about how quickly this has escalated from, it seems like it was just, I don't know, several weeks ago. It's probably, I'll have to look at the date, but it was not long ago that suddenly there was word that there was a whistleblower, and then it just snowballed.
Well, the Republicans today tried to convince the American public this is all a political vendetta and an impeachment in search of a crime or in search of a high crime and misdemeanor. But what you see today essentially is breaking down what it really means
to reject. Away right now.
Yes, to reject the notion that you are above the law. What that means essentially is that no one is immune from the constitutional oversight that our founding fathers contemplated. They actually predicted you would once need impeachment. That was also a foregone conclusion to everyone, that you would have to have a check and balance. And what today's votes have all been about is whether or not the separation of powers still stands, whether or not you can actually be co-equal branches of government, and whether you can certainly be the republic if you can actually keep it. You're seeing this vote right now. It's unfolding. You're only a few away from actually capturing it. And this is the essence of what democracy is. As one representative said today, it's a sad day for America, but it's a great day for constitutional democracy.
And they're 2 votes away now, 2 yay votes away from the Article 2 passing, the resolution passing, that is the obstruction of Congress. They have already voted on Article 1, and that has passed the abuse of power resolution. This will be the final article of impeachment to be voted on. They're just 2 votes away. Kirsten, and now they are just 1 vote away from adopting this Article 2, obstruction of Congress. And then, of course, the question is, where does it go from here? It moves into the Senate. We know what's going to happen in the Senate, at least writ large. We don't know the details or how it may play out.
Right, but whatever happens in the Senate, it doesn't take away from what has happened.
There it is. Here. Sorry, 216 yay votes, 3 Democrats voting nay on that, but 216, that is the threshold they need to meet.
And Donald Trump has joined a very exclusive club that nobody wants to belong to. And presidents who've been impeached, it will now be forever part of his legacy, and he will never be able to escape it. And it is something that the Republicans talked a lot about. Voters matter. They were criticizing the Democrats, basically saying voters matter and you're ignoring the voters. Well, of course, the voters mattered when they impeached Clinton, and they mattered today. But the founders did allow for this to happen. They did put this in the Constitution so that in the case where the president had crossed a line, like this president did, that there was a remedy for it, and the remedy was impeachment. And I think we have been watching this and knowing what was going to happen, but people should just take a moment and be aware of how grave this is and how historic it is and how this really almost never happens in the history of this country.
It's also something that President Trump himself, I mean, in that letter that he wrote to Nancy Pelosi and was released yesterday, acknowledging, he said he wrote that letter for history.
See, my policy just officially came to pass.
And others to look back, and
President Trump, you were impeached, just like I said.
But he's well aware.
You are impeached.
That this is an indelible mark. This is
all you false men of God, but you gotta say that. But I know you're gonna lie though, so don't fucking really matter anyway.
The decisions we made.
And none of you shit, bro. And you told him, y'all nigga told that nigga that he would never get impeached. Whose word came to pass? Not yours.
He had an opportunity. He had
Stupid.
time if he wanted it to defend himself, to make the case that this wasn't an impeachable offense. Instead, he stonewalled in a way that Jeffrey explained, in an unprecedented way. And then he sends a rant to be his defense to history. That was a missed opportunity. It's going to hurt him because right now his side hasn't been mentioned and explained. Maybe in the Senate we'll see it, but likely not.
Until we hear from Nancy Pelosi, it's Emerson Farm.
Yeah, I think this is a tragic day. This is you're right. Donald Trump's going to be judged. His presidency is going to be judged by the fact he was impeached. But the people who voted to impeach him are going to be judged too. And I don't think this is going to reflect well on them any more than it reflected well on the radical Republicans who tried to get rid of Andrew Johnson. That's not look. Johnson is somewhat in history not thought well of, but neither were the people that tried to impeach him. And I think that's really the case there. It was a very political case on the part of those going after Johnson. It is look, I was involved in the 98-99 impeachment of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had done what he did today. There's one person who wouldn't want him out of office. I mean, there was a different time, but he got away with just sex that today he wouldn't get away with. It was a different standard. So the idea that somehow or another, we looking back on that, I think Republicans actually look pretty good as being pretty woke at the time of this going on. But today, I just don't see this anything but how the Republicans have laid it out. And that is that this has been a constant attempt by Democrats to go after this president. And you can say, well, Bush wasn't impeached, they wanted to, and others, but they had votes on impeachment of this president, multiple votes to try to get rid of this president. I think it's going to reflect badly. And this next election was probably going to be that first element of how that's going to be judged.
Sure. And yet, if you were to compare, say, the example you gave of Bill Clinton compared to President Trump's 6-page letter yesterday, you have a distinct difference between one president who was contrite and apologetic and one who doubled down and was defensive and actually went on the offensive on this very notion. And one thing about Andrew Johnson, he needs to mention, he is the president who has been impeached, but he was not an elected president. This is a moment in history. This is the very first time you have a first-term president of the United States being impeached. Much has been made about the will of the people and trying to rewrite an election or looking ahead to 2020. But the really important notion here is that for the very first time, there could actually be not a second term on an impeached president. Clinton, of course, is already in a second term. We know Nixon already resigned before he was even having the opposition draft against him. So this is momentous in the fact that that phrase of the will of the people could mean much more today than it ever has.
We are just moments away now, perhaps even seconds away from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi gaveling and announcing that the second article of impeachment has actually been passed.
I think that's why the judgment on this impeachment is going to be quicker and more severe. Because unlike every other impeachment, there was an election shortly after the impeachment where those who impeached, as well as the president impeached, are going to be judged by the American public. And if Donald Trump gets reelected, if a bunch of these people who won Trump's districts lose, this is going to go down as it's going to be characterized by history by the winners.
Charlie, do you have a sense of how this plays out in the election?
I don't think any of us know for sure. We don't. But I just look. I keep seeing these swing district Democrats, like in Oklahoma and South Carolina and in Utah, who just voted to impeach the president in very strong Trump districts. they must see something in their polling. They're voting. Maybe they're voting just on their principles, but they have taken a political calculation too. They can survive this.
With all due respect, Charlie, every single one of these people has a primary they have to get through before they get to the general election. And look at Jeff Van Drew, look at others. Anyone who crossed the Democratic orthodoxy on this was being abandoned in their primary. They could not, if they wanted to survive the primary, vote against this.
Rick, you just gave a characteristically eloquent statement about how the Democrats don't like Donald Trump, but you left out one thing, and you left out the same thing that Republicans keep leaving out throughout this discussion, which is what Donald Trump did. You never defend what he did. Did he go to a vulnerable country and say, you're only getting our taxpayer money if you give us dirt on Joe Biden? And is that okay?
I think every Republican would say that he did not do that. I think every Republican who voted that would say there's no proof that he did that. And again, you don't see an accusation, as they've said, of bribery.
No, I mean, he says read the transcript. That is in the transcript.
Anderson, we've had this conversation many times on the show. We'll have it again. I'm just telling you. Look, I would just say reasonable people can disagree in reading this transcript. And here's the thing that bothers me is that everyone who reads that transcript reads it from the perspective that Donald Trump does not deserve any benefit of the doubt what he's doing.
But it is not just the transcript. We had days of testimony
of which there's no firsthand knowledge of what the president. Well, then wait until you get the judge deciding whether to turn it over. Wait.
But the fact that he's not allowing those people to testify because
you presume he's guilty.
That's what you're saying. That's what I'm saying. You are putting your head in the sand because you are choosing to ignore the fact. You are ignoring the fact that if those people would exonerate him, they would be testifying, and you know that. There is no reason for him to break the precedent of what every other president has done and have them testify. I just the idea.
Again, that's the assumption you're making. I don't think you can do that. I just don't think. Then he confessed to it on national television. We're speaking generally, not specific.
Okay, sorry, we just need to go to Wolf and Jake.
You know, Anderson, as we await the speaker to announce the results of the second article of impeachment obstruction of Congress, okay, I'm going to show our viewers how she did it. It's the first article of impeachment. She gathered this at 230 in favor of 197, opposed one present.
Article 1 is adopted. The question is on adoption of Article 2. The question is on the adoption of Article 2.
Yeah, and there was a pattern of law. Parent or former child would recognize don't do that. You know, I told you not to do that. Don't do that. And look, this is something she was trying to navigate the whole time she's been speaker. And the time she did not listen to her was cited. They refused. I'm with the one that just
is 1. Article 2 is
you just did it again. Somebody else did it again. It looked like kind of like one person is what you put it again. He has had most of the Democrats, you have to give it credit. Most of the Democrats have been in line. They have been solemn, they have been serious, they have not lost the serious, the gravity it deserves.
Article 1 is right on the table. Without objection, the motion to reconsider Article 2 is right on the table.
Section 7B of House Resolution 758. The House stands adjourned till 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Just to continue my point, but there have been a handful of members. Congressman Al
prophecy just getting passed.
Along with Congressman Brad Sherman, articles of impeachment in the summer.
December 18, 2019. You see all this thing happening. I'm telling you,
at a celebration.
2020, you have one more year. Because 2020 is the end of time. 2021 starts the time of God, where the words of Revelation start coming past. I have already decided
to paint the entire Democratic Party, who for the most part
And on those days, my seals would be loose. And the trumpets would be blown.
Crazy, and you saw her trying
And then we'll get
defend
to the
that
mark of the
again
beast.
this evening. Twice.
And then we'll come to
and John and I were
the
talking about
wrath
this
of
before.
God.
She has been pitch perfect.
You understand?
Almost pitch perfect, I would say. And she understands the solemnity of the moment. And this is her flock, these Democrats. And some of them are young and some of them are incredibly partisan. And she warned them, no applause. This is not a time for applause. And that look could kill.
Right. Hold on one moment. I just want to go to Dana. She's up on Capitol Hill and done a lot of reporting over the years on the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Your thoughts?
Well, it was the look, but it was also the flick, and that's the word that I'm hearing from people who were on the floor, including people who work for the Speaker. The flick of the hand, along with the look, said it all, and really did it was kind of a capstone moment of how she tried to take her entire caucus through this process that she didn't want to be leading them through. When she walked by here, I don't know, now 12 hours ago, onto the House floor, I asked, "How are you feeling?" And she said, "Sad." That was the tone that she was trying to set. That was the atmosphere that she wanted around this process that she reluctantly allowed and guided the Democrats through. And so that is why that moment is so significant, because it really encapsulates the kind of leader that she is. And as you and Jake were saying, the kind of raucous caucus that she has, particularly the progressive side, who have been pushing, and doing so in a way that she understands in her core is not that beneficial politically.
Yeah, very important points indeed. John, you wanted to weigh in as well.
It's the same point, and we're going to see this in the Senate as well. Yes, Nancy Pelosi would like to see a Democrat elected in the presidential election next year. Yes, Mitch McConnell says he's working hand in glove with the Trump White House. Nancy Pelosi, everything she has done in this process is to protect her majority first and foremost. Everything Mitch McConnell is doing in the Senate is to protect his majority first and foremost, which is why he's saying, Mr. President, you're not getting your witnesses. In Nancy Pelosi's case, she didn't want those cheers, and she didn't want, remember, Republicans wanted to have the vote by, to say your name. Republicans wanted to have a full roll call vote, the old-fashioned way, where they would say, Congresswoman Slotkin, and she would have to say aye. It's against House rules for a member to use the floor in a campaign ad, but we have seen the floor show up in super PAC ads. Nancy Pelosi did not want her members to have to, on camera, say aye, because the vulnerable ones, it would be used against them in an ad, and she does not want cheering on the floor, because liberals from very safe districts can all get up and cheer, but some Republican super PAC will use it in an ad against the vulnerable Democrats, saying not only did they impeach the president, they cheered. She did not want that. She is all about protecting her.
Yeah, she has been very much, I think, it's always behind the scenes. If you think about Newt Gingrich, right, and that impeachment of Bill Clinton, it was very much of Newt Gingrich versus Donald Trump.
Trump has been impeached. My words as counterpart.
Democrats in vulnerable districts are going to have a tough time.
I told you, bro. I'm a prophet.
Understands power, right?
I told you I was a prophet, bro. I'm sorry I didn't record the other one, but I wasn't supposed to. You saw it on news.
Which must have been very hard. So
all I do is point it out, and I did.
As a woman wielding this power.
And beyond the politics of it, can I say I do actually think that Speaker Pelosi, and we had a town hall in this very spot a week or two ago, I think she actually does feel the gravity of this moment. And now that both of these articles of impeachment have been gavelled down, again, let us just take a moment. This has only happened 2 other times in the United States history. President Trump has now been impeached.
All right, Joe, I'm out of here, man.
Abuse of power and
got what I need.
Congress, and
Trump has been impeached. My words is coming to pass. Prophecy.
His presidency when we're all long gone.
Prophecy.
300, 400, 500.
All you pastors are false. You don't understand shit about the Bible.
And what Democrat, Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a Democratic